Today I'm going to show you the separation of church and state, and that it was meant for the inclusion, not the exclusion, of religion and moral issues in our public life. Congress drafted under Thomas Jefferson in 1776 the Declaration of Independence. Thomas Jefferson, Declaration of Independence. He stated in reference to Amendment 1, which is the guarantee of free exercise of religion, that religious issues are the sole purview of the states. Jefferson's wall of separation applied only to the federal government, and he intended that the states independently educate in religious and moral lessons. The U.S. Congress drafted the Northwest Ordinance of 1787. And in Article 3 of the ordinance, it states that religion, morality, and knowledge being necessary to good government and happiness of mankind, schools, and the means of education shall forever endure. Thomas Paine, back in those days, was Secretary of Foreign Affairs between the Americas and France. And with our revolution and our independence from France, he was the liaison between the Americas and France. And what Thomas Paine said, his views on separation of church and state, was that there was one God, and his moral character and virtues rest in the hopes of happiness. So I say to you that the separation of church and state was never meant for the exclusion of religious and moral issues within our government, but rather it be a fundamental law that did not depict any one religion, sect, or creed. The First Amendment of the Constitution, freedom of religion, was intended that there would be no indication of the government's exclusion. So what it's saying is that it never said that the government was to be excluded from religious or moral issues. It was just that there was to be no preference. Our founding fathers' intent was that the Ten Commandments be our foundation beliefs. Drafting of the U.S. Congress Northwest Ordinance, Article 3 of 1787, says that we should be educated in both religious and moral lessons, expressed constraint for what was taught, that these lessons be universal and not biased by any particular denomination, sect, or creed. Jefferson went on to write a letter to our Commonwealth of Virginia at the time of 1822, and in that letter he says, "In our village of Charlottesville, there's a good degree of religion with a small slice of fanaticism. We have our sects, but without a church or a meeting house." He said, "Let the courthouse be the common temple for these meetings." His plan that he went ahead and laid out for everyone was that one Sunday of every month, each denomination would take turns preaching in the courthouse. And that would be at the time, the Episcopalians, the Presbyterians, the Methodists, the Baptists, and that each preaching, everyone would get together and they would sing in common hymns to their Maker. But they would, out of respect, listen to each one preach because they had no gathering place at that time. His idea was, with respect to all the denominations, that they join together and thereby mix in society with perfect harmony. The intent of our first representatives was to prevent future Congress and presidents from declaring that only one church could exist in the U.S. Over time, however, it was generally accepted that the First Amendment prohibited federal, state, or local governments in the U.S. from raising tax money for a church or a particular group of churches. Eventually, the Supreme Court, with regards to the Establishment Clause, required the government to be neutral with regards to religion. Thus, their interpretation of the wall of separation. They did not want any religion favored. That part be true from our founding fathers, that no religion was to be favored. But the controversy for the courts is just how high that wall of separation is. And it keeps getting higher and higher. Gallup polls of Americans stated that there were 77% of Americans in the United States that actually supported the First Amendment and the right to free exercise of religion, and its statement that religious monuments be in our courthouses. Well, back in 2007, a U.S. district judge by the name of Myron Thompson, and I remember this, of Mobile, Alabama, ordered that the Ten Commandments be removed from our courthouse, or from their courthouse there. So the Ten Commandments now sit in a back room out of public view. And in my opinion, that's a direct violation of our constitutional rights. Chief Justice Roy Moore said, "It is a sad day in our country when the moral foundation of our law and the acknowledgement of God must be hidden for public view and to appease a federal judge and a minority of his supporting citizens." So certainly the Boy Scouts would have been able to decorate the City Hall, and Salvation Army would have been able to ring their bell on government properties or even public places that they're excluded from now without ridicule or the threat of lawsuits. Modern analysis of the First Amendment has been so twisted that our founding fathers would scarcely recognize its application in our society, in our current society today. We should educate ourselves and demand that our politicians be educated as well on the First Amendment and its applications in our society. But not only the First Amendment, the whole Constitution. This would resolve our Constitution crisis and the constant amendments that are being done to our Constitution because everyone is trying to be pleased at the same time. So one amendment after another, they keep adding to our Constitution when all it does is really dilute the meaning of our Constitution, and not just Amendment 1. It would steer us back to the real intent of our first representatives and our founding fathers, which was meant that we are, the Americas, are a great nation under God. Thank you.
Thank you.